Welcome to Pharmacy View, Technology and Pharmacy Business podcast series, where we provide regular interviews with pharmacists and key industry people within the Australian pharmacy and associated industry. In each podcast, we look to discuss aspects of pharmacy operation and how technology is improving or interacting with each guest's current role or pharmacy-related business. I'm your host, Scott Carpenter, and today's guest is sponsored by Shopfront Solutions, leading the way in digital marketing and communications, providing a cloud-based platform for pharmacies to manage all of their digital messaging and print-based collateral. For more information on the Shopfront Solutions digital platform, simply go to the website at shopfrontsolutions.com.au. I'm talking today with Hamish Sadler from Zippy.ai. Welcome, Hamish.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
That's great, Hamish. I'm looking forward to our chat today. Also joining us is co-hosts Andrew Romeo and Anthony Saponsis from Arian Technologies. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for the invite back, mate. Appreciate it. It's been a while.
It's great to have you all here. And there's a reason that you're all here today, because this is a level of technology that will apply for pharmacy that maybe isn't getting a lot of discussion at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to this one. So I guess what we're looking at today is digital transaction technology, particularly around retail, online, and this would include pharmacy. And it's certainly an area that I'm seeing is evolving. Every day I'm reading or seeing something around this arena. And even from my own business perspective, one of the things that I guess I'm transitioning to is from the paper-based receipts to digital receipts. And some of the retailers that I deal with do it and some don't. So on that note, Hamish, I'm bringing you in because I guess you're the expert in this area. Tell us all about it.
Thanks for the opportunity. Happy to be here. Obviously, Zippy.ai is the world's first and only privacy-preserving data-rich payments platform. We provide in-store and online payment terminals and solutions, plus online dashboards to merchants, as well as free-to-use web-based and native apps and tools for consumers to receive their data and deals and rewards. We are backed by 5 patents, and what we innovatively do at Zippy.ai is that we help establish a two-way, completely private, end-to-end encrypted communication channel between the merchants and their consumers via payments without the need to exchange contact details. Examples of the data that can be transferred via Zippy include smart receipts or product recall notifications or catalogs or even COVID test notifications that are sent from the merchant to their consumers, and or loyalty reward card numbers that could be provided from the shopper back to the merchants. Obviously, there's a lot of weight on the term privacy preserving in the DNA of the Zippy solution, which means we maintain no knowledge of the data that we transfer between merchants and their customers. And that has a significantly important outcome. By that, obviously, we maintain no knowledge of the business's itemized sales data, nor the consumer's private purchase history. That effectively solves 2 of the biggest barriers against the adoption of digital receipts, which include retailer avoidance to share data as well as consumer privacy. But alongside with those interesting attributes, one of the counterintuitive questions that the Zippy platform and its design answer is how might we not know what the consumers have bought, but yet remain enabled to determine their eligibility for their rewards. And I believe during the conversation there will be opportunities to discuss this further on. The interesting aspect that I wanted to sort of focus on, especially in the context of pharmacies, is that the biggest barriers against the adoption of digital receipts have been 3 problems effectively. The first one is retailer avoidance, the second one is consumer privacy, and the third one being lack of infrastructure and standards. And those first 2 obviously have a lot to do with privacy at both ends of the transaction. And at Zippy.ai, we are proud to have solved both of those problems via the adoption of end-to-end encryption for the transfer of data.
Yep.
What is, in terms of end-to-end encryption, what does that mean in the context of the retail store and the consumer what does that mean for them, and how does it apply to Zippy.ai, the platform itself?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Obviously, in practice, what I wanted to sort of get to make it quite easy to understand is the fact that what Zippy has done innovatively is that we have designed and invented systems and methods to establish an end-to-end encrypted transfer of data possible within the payments. Effectively, it's like using payments as a communication pathway between the two ends of the payment. And end-to-end encryption effectively is a paradigm of data transfer whereby the intermediary who transfers the data maintains no knowledge of the data itself.
Okay.
It involves the use of cryptography at both ends, and the data effectively gets encrypted and decrypted at both ends so that in the middle no one has access to it. And one of its use cases probably people have been more exposed to is within the space of instant messaging tools like WhatsApp or Signal Secure Messenger and the like. The idea is to establish a private channel between two ends and effectively maintain zero knowledge of the data that is transferred. And one of the good uses for it is actually the case of digital receipts, especially in the context of pharmacies, because there is a heavy weight of privacy requirements for the pharmaceutical receipts.
Yep.
And what we realized alongside with our journey at Zippy.ai was that it can have a really, really good use case in the context of financial statements and privacy preserving methods of including digital receipts in transactions, which is why we actually ended up adopting it. But all in all, to answer your question, Andrew, it's a mechanism of data transfer whereby the intermediary who transfers the data maintains no knowledge of the data itself. It's almost equivalent to the privacy that you get from a completely private conversation or a paper receipt, in effect.
Okay, and I guess that's where I wanted to just interrogate that a little bit more. So if I'm a customer today in a pharmacy, I transact either from a script or from a front of shop transaction, and I would effectively walk out with some form of receipt. But I guess in today's world of climate change and being good for the ecology of the world, we want to try and reduce a lot of that. And so a point of sale system. In fact, I was in a coffee shop last weekend where I could opt for a digital receipt for the coffee I was purchasing through a text message. But I'm assuming that coffee shop and the platform that was using has that information on my transaction. That you're saying that your technology doesn't give them that data, or does give them that data?
No, it's a very good question as well. And I think what I would like to sort of say is that at the moment, the current state is that you go to a shop, you make some purchases, you buy something, and then you leave. And the options that are available to you to receive the extra data as part of the payment are either you get a paper receipt, which is obviously not good for the environment. At the same time, all the data on that receipt is going to be probably useless for you unless you scan it or
Yep.
you extract the text or something. Or the other alternative is that you end up having to provide your phone number or email address of some sort to effectively identify yourself to the merchant so that they can have a routing address or something to you to deliver a digital format of that. And the other moving part of this is that if you want to eliminate the need to collect personal information, which, as you know, in certain jurisdictions might actually be illegal. One example for that is California. In California, there was a case, I think it's called Cap versus Nordstrom, whereby somebody provided their email address and then they got back to the retailer because of sending marketing material to them. And effectively, there was a legal case which was won by the customer. Effectively, in certain jurisdictions, you don't have the right to ask for email addresses. But if you do, there is this element of having to get the customer to identify themselves so that you can send them the details. But that's not normally convenient.
Yep.
I guess what I wanted to sort of get to is a number of pain points that I wanted to sort of go through very quickly and highlight how Zippy helps with that, and also why we are actually doing it in a different way. The goal is for the transfer of data to be seamless, what it means is that you shouldn't have to identify yourself. Somehow you should get the data without necessarily having to identify yourself or provide anything. So all of these 10 or 11 items that I want to go through very quickly are actually problems in this space. The first one is extra data should be part of payments, but they are not at the moment. And that's because of two things. A, the current protocols in payment do not support that. They were mainly built and designed to just include payments, not necessarily extra verifiable data that the merchant also provides, or also the customer also provides.
Okay.
What's some examples there of extra data, Hamish, just for people listening?
Yes, it's a very good question as well. So obviously, example of data that fundamentally Zippy makes possible to be transferred in a private fashion from the merchant to the shopper includes the smart receipt or product recalls or even COVID-19 test recalls. Those are the samples or examples of data or notifications that could be sent from a merchant to a shopper. Okay. There's also the other way around of it, which is a case where, for example, the shopper provides their existing loyalty card number to the merchant during a transaction. So what Zippy has done quite smartly is that we make a two-way communication, completely private two-way communication pathway possible just as part of the payment without any party having to do anything extra. I think that's a quite important part of it, because in your example, having to provide an email address or a phone number, despite the fact that it might be possible, some people might be okay with that, but that's not a long-term sustainable solution.
Everyone knows why they're handing over an email or a phone number, and it's the next day is going to be a marketing email in my inbox. That's generally what happens. But yeah, that's my reluctance.
Yes,
I'd never give it.
I wanted to also cite the fact that as I was going through the list, every party in this process has some jobs to be done, basically as desirable a state or outcome that they are after, and the desire to collect personal information might have some marketing benefits for the retailer, and I think that has to be respected in some ways, which is what at Zippy we have fulfilled in a different way, in a healthy way. In other words, what we've done is, even though through our platform the data transfer can happen without anybody identifying themselves, but the possibility for the retailer to reach out to their customers still is available to them. I think this is quite significant as well. So no data-rich payment solution can go to a retailer and say, I have solved the problem of digital receipts, but you don't have the option of reaching out to your customer. I think that is a return that the retailers are actually looking into, and we made sure that in the design of our platform, that goal can be achieved. I wanted to also go back to the list of the problems that I was just going through just quickly.
Yep.
So there is no way to embed data. Inclusion of tamper-resistant legal statements like invoices requires public key infrastructure, cryptography, and extra heavy work. Millions of trees are being killed and turned into paper receipt.
Yep.
Retailers have no easy way to reach out to and send data to their shoppers, except by asking details or except by encouraging rewards membership.
Yep.
In certain jurisdictions, as I highlighted, it might be illegal to ask personal details. Franchises and merchants have no easy way to basically distribute payments between the franchise head office and also the franchisees. Retailers and consumers feel uncomfortable disclosing itemized sales data to third parties. In-store checkout process is effectively long. It has 3 steps. You pay, you scan a rewards card. At the same time, you have to get a receipt after that, either in printed format or emailed format.
Okay.
Online checkout process also requires the entry of personal information, and we've got tens of rewards cards and no insights on where we spend our money. So all of these sub problems in this space exist. On top of that, the retailer avoidance and consumer privacy, which Zippy AI solves in a very interesting way. I just want to sort of go through those and then build upon any of those sort of dimensions within this problem space.
Yeah. Sorry, Hamish, I don't want to interrupt you on your points because I know we're going to work through them, but if I can just clarify there at this stage. So if I go back to my coffee shop example, what you're saying to me is that where I had to provide my mobile phone number for them to be able to text me my receipt, what Zippy provides to me, the consumer, and to that coffee shop is the ability for me to get that digital receipt without providing my personal detail because of the way I pay for my transaction.
Exactly. So that's exactly the state that we have achieved, which is a seamless transfer of data without you having to identify yourself or providing any personal details at the counter or even at a later point. And all of that is happening through the payment. So you tap and go, the data somehow magically is delivered to you, and that's the state that we have achieved yet.
Excellent.
Yes, you're getting the same value without giving up anything.
Pretty much.
And I guess that's going to raise a question from the retailer's point of view. Well, okay, and I know we'll answer this later on, but so how do I get my information then? But we'll address that through your points.
Yes, exactly. So that's the question that I believe should be asked, because as I said, the job to be done for the retailer, which should not be ignored, is the very fact that the whole concept of asking personal details might have some value for the retailer that we have to respect in the end, because they want to know their customers. That's their job to be done. But what Zippy has done quite uniquely is that we create that communication pathway for the retailer, for all of their payers, for all of their paying customers, without the necessity of collecting the detail. I think the pain point there was that customer avoidance. Many times we've been asked in a retail outlet that, would you like to join our rewards program? Sometimes yes, most of the times probably no, because we already have tens of rewards cards. We just want another one. And also the fact that the registration, the process, the entry of personal details, sharing that. There's also other elements like personalization is not necessarily a motivating factor for people to share personal details. That's another dimension that we have solved via Zippy. So the goal is you go and shop, you get your rewards seamlessly without having to work for it. That's another thing that Zippy has solved as well.
So what you're saying here is effectively every payer or shopper is somehow linked to the store and effectively on a reward, could effectively be on a loyalty program just through their purchase history or a credit card or an FOS card or that sort of model. Is that what I'm hearing here?
Yes, pretty much. That's exactly the way it looks like. So the experience is you go and tap your card. In practice, it is like you have subscribed to their deals and offers without necessarily providing any details. And the seller, obviously, the merchant themselves will have a dashboard that they can use for basically publicizing their offers and deals. And those deals could effectively be even applied at itemized level. Effectively, you can create a campaign like this. If somebody buys item X in the last 3 months, I'm going to give them item Y for X% off. So that item level rule-based definition of rewards can also be achieved at Zippy, which is quite unique. Something like that doesn't exist anywhere else, as well as the point-based system, yes.
Yeah, and that would be a great idea, particularly in pharmacy, where medication A requires probiotic B, for example. So what you're saying to me is that whilst the pharmacy may not know the customer specifically, the platform knows the customer, and the pharmacy would say, can you send this special to all of the customers that have purchased product A?
Exactly. So that item level identification certainly is a possibility. And we use a sophisticated process to effectively hide the data from ourselves. At the same time, make it possible to effectively establish that communication channel to the customer without necessarily collecting their email addresses. We use a combination of two methods, one of which is a push notification, just to highlight. We don't want to make it too technical, but for sending a push notification to a device, you don't necessarily need to have anyone's email address or phone number. It's quite critical as an understanding, because most of retailers probably do ask this question: how come we can reach out to a customer without collecting their details? Effectively, it's their phone. The phone is a communication mechanism itself. You don't necessarily need to collect people's email address or phone numbers. I think that is quite critical to send as a message. And Zippy uses a combination of both. We don't necessarily promote the idea that let's send push notifications to everyone for marketing purposes. Our platform provides free apps, both web-based apps and native apps, to the customers that they can go to in order to see all their applicable offers and deals. You can actually send them deals in a more of a form of a deal rather than an email. And that's not effectively what the use of an email should be originally. So that's one way. The other way is what we promote as I said, push notifications are more like an urgent case where some product recalls have to happen. For example, milk from this state to this state wasn't good, bring it back, or get tested for COVID-19. These types of scenarios obviously do require urgent contact with the customer, which we allow and authorize the use of push notifications for. But in normal scenarios, deals and offers and catalogs, for example, printed or used to be printed material can now be delivered to all your shoppers, to all the customers that have bought from you seamlessly without you actually having to spend thousands potentially on printed material. That's another dimension that Zippy makes possible, and I want to highlight that as well.
And then as a merchant, you're sending that deal or offer to customer X, Y, and Z, not knowing that that's Anthony, Andrew, and Scott. You don't know that the customer's details or name. You just know an identifier, which makes no sense to anyone.
Based on their purchase, right? So, it's based on patterns and purchasing history. I think another thing I'm sort of getting a grip of is the ability for you to track transactional history across non-loyalty customers that are not identified, so you can understand spending habits between a person that might be on a credit card, for example, and get a grip on what their spending habits are. And then from a marketing perspective, I imagine that's still some sort of opt-in though, because we don't want to directly spam these people because they'll not be in the same position as we were before. So how does that work? Is it still some form of opt-in from that sort of deals perspective? How does that sit?
Yes, no, it's a very good question. Obviously, being the world's first and only privacy-preserving data-rich payment platform, we do respect the fact that it's got to be, it's got to be sensible for the customers to not to be spammed, and that is the foundational DNA of the platform. There's a number of things I wanted to highlight. The first fact is, reality is that the possibility to be identified using your card, that should have existed before. The reason it doesn't exist yet is because nobody can give away your card details to identify you, because the card details are protected, secure information. One of the things that Zippy has done really well is to make a process possible whereby if you tap your card and go, a customer identifier is generated out of that, and that customer identifier is unique per store chain in such a way that if I go and tap the same card in another chain that is Zippy enabled, another identifier is created.
Okay.
Yes, so basically the goal is the data that Zippy maintains on its platform should not give a possibility for an attacker or anyone else, or even ourselves, to track people. That's the first foundation. The friction point there is, obviously it's complex how it's calculated, but the goal is that if I go back to my example, if I go back to shop number 1 again and tap my card again, I get the same identifier. So even without doing anything, the merchant can identify me as a returning customer and can link the previous transactions to this current transaction. Effectively, that enables the point of sale system or a merchant to connect those types of transactions that in the past were absolutely disconnected, and they couldn't have any ways to connect them and see the patterns or even the times of entry and exit, and those types of data are effectively provided. That identifier, again, I want to highlight, is unique per chain and changes from chain to chain, but remains the same over time as long as you're using the same card. And that enables the merchant to get that insight. That's one side of the story. The other side is, how do we identify the customer? So there's one side of it, which is card identification. So we give that, out of box. It's possible, even if you don't, as a consumer, even if you don't sign up with Zippy and don't even want to have your receipts and everything else, still the card generates that identifier, which is quite useful for the merchant. But we also, if the user has already signed up with Zippy and is a Zippy member and is accessing their rewards card and everything else, we also identify the customer. Remember, we can have multiple cards. In that sense, if I go back to the same shop and buy with another card, my customer identifier is going to remain the same.
Thank you for listening today. Pharmacy View is a technology-focused podcast provided by Melbourne-based business Arian Technologies and Shopfront Solutions. Over the podcast series, our guests include pharmacists, retail managers, wholesalers, suppliers, and industry technology partners. If you would like further information on our podcast series or to participate in one of our episodes, feel free to send me a message or touch base through the Pharmacy View website, pharmacyview.com.au.